Welcome to In Touch Part 2, Crime Beat, where we talk about criminal justice views and things that are happening. And I'm Officer Don, along with Commonwealth Attorney Ray Larson. This week it's been in the news. This is the case involving Michael Turpin, who was killed, brutally murdered years ago, and now his killers are up for parole. Ray, tell us again about this horrific case. What happened?
Elizabeth Turpin, she's now Zender. She went back to her maiden name since she'd been in prison. Married Michael Turpin, and was sorry she was married. And she worked at Superior Nissan at the time. And one of her fellow employees was a Karen Brown. Karen Brown lived an alternative lifestyle and fell in love with Liz Turpin. Liz Turpin complained about being mistreated, which is untrue, but she complained about it. And Karen Brown was in love with her. And so all of the complaints from Liz Turpin, she wanted her husband dead because she wanted $60,000 worth of life insurance money. So Karen Brown recruited Keith Bouchard, who also worked at Superior Nissan. And so they went over one night, February the 2nd, 1986. Karen Brown and Keith Bouchard knocked on the door. Elizabeth Turpin conveniently stayed somewhere else that night. They went in, as soon as they opened the door, they jumped him and started stabbing him. They stabbed him 19 times, bled to death. They put him in the trunk of the car, took him to Jacobson Park, and dumped him in the lake. 2 days later, his body was found on February the 4th, 1986, which is 25 years ago today, the day we're recording In Touch Crime Beat. And so we went to trial. Karen Brown and Elizabeth Turpin each got a life sentence. They weren't eligible for parole for 25 years. 25 years is up, and they've had the victim parole hearing where the victim's family appears to talk about the impact this crime, this homicide, has had on them. And we went over there, and two of the people that we work with now, Caroline Dunn, who is an employee with our office, and Caroline Hamilton, who's an intern from the University of Kentucky, went to that hearing with us. And they're both here today, and I wanted you to talk to them about, from basically kind of a civilian standpoint, somebody that has not been used to being involved in this kind of thing. How did this victim impact hearing, how did it go? And what was their impression? How did it affect them? So they're here, and I wish you'd talk to them about it.
Caroline, you've never been to a parole hearing?
No, it's my first one.
Well, it's sort of interesting to get your perspective from someone who, I guess, they'll accuse Ray and I of being hardened for being in the system so long. We're not, but anyway, you got to harden yourself a little bit just to survive some of this stuff. From your perspective, going to this hearing, what's the first thing that you noticed when you walked in the door?
Well, just everything was very intense. Everyone was very emotional, and at one point I even got emotional because you just can't help it. Just sitting there and watching the family, they're so sad, and there's nothing they can do except beg the parole board for their son's killers to be on the streets again. It's just sad and ridiculous, I think.
So you walk into the room, and the parole board, they're a group of guys and gals sitting at a table, and then you've got, I guess, the audience.
Right.
And then you've got a place where the victims can come forward and approach the board and start begging, basically.
That's exactly right, except there wasn't really an audience. It was just the family.
Okay.
And you could just tell that the family was still just very upset over everything.
Okay, so 25 years after the killer of Donald Turpin's son was sentenced, he has to come back and relive this.
Exactly.
In front of his parole board and talk about how this affected him and how they feel about the killers being on the street. It's like, duh. You know, why? What is the purpose in making the family go through this? What did you see?
Yes, exactly. Much like Caroline said, it was an experience that I wasn't prepared for walking into the room. I didn't realize how overwhelming, just deeply personal it was going to be for the family. And what struck me is that, you know, this was just one hearing on one day. How many of these hearings are going on all over the country every day where people are begging that murderers aren't released on the streets? Obviously, there's some crimes that, you know, maybe a stint in jail could, you know, correct the person, you know, they come out, they benefit for it. Is murder really an issue where someone can be corrected? You know, this lady planned and plotted the murder of her husband for $60,000. Is that something that 25 years in jail can correct? For me, I thought it was absurd that that was even a question, that she should be released for
We've done
actions like
in the last week is had some contact with a woman that wrote a book about this called Fatal Seduction, and a person that was there when we got her to talk about the creation of this book also works in our office, and that's Amy Graham. Amy, what has been your response, or what was your reaction to the woman that wrote this book called Fatal Seduction?
After talking to her, I thought it was interesting that she seemed to focus more on the defendants and the people who committed the murders as opposed to the victims. She actually waited to the very end to actually tell Miss Turpin's father about the actual crime, or
Really?
that she was actually
The
writing
people
a book.
involved
Okay.
sort of were responsible, not Karen Brown.
Yes, and not her. But she actually realized after interviewing Karen Brown that she was actually as much part of it as the other two people.